Hello, everyone. Welcome to Coffee, Kegs, and Kriegsspiel. I see I'm 2 minutes late to the show. To make up for it, I'll run 2 minutes extra, right? I was not prepared. I was busy looking at all kinds of other stuff, taking a trip down memory lane, and looking at how um, the original hook that got me into Kriegspiel, how that community is doing, and the game that got me involved to begin with, how that game has been developed and modded. So I'm going to talk about all of that and what all of that means here directly. Um, but I want to talk about how I learned my Kriegspiel on the streets. See, a number of people out there learn their Kriegspiel because perhaps they were taught or they actually read the rule books or something. That's not the case with me. Like I said, or like I tell people, I learned it on the streets of Los Angeles. And I think that's an interesting story for, at least for me. So, people have asked me if I would share the story, so I said, sure, I'll tell you how I learned Kriegsspiel on the streets of Los Angeles. Now, when I say the streets of Los Angeles, I actually mean the LAX Hilton and the LAX Sheraton Inn because that was the original meeting place of the Southern California Kriegsspiel Society. But even before that, I would have to go back probably a year or two, maybe even more prior to that. And well, let's just go to the beginning. I'm rambling, okay? So, sometime around, gosh, 2009, 2010, they came out with this really cool game called Scourge of War, and it wasn't originally Gettysburg. I have it up on my screen. I don't know if I'm. You should be able to see it here momentarily on the stream, or you should see it already because. All right. So here's the game, and they had I think it was like a Bull Run edition or whatever, and the Bull Run edition was a single player game, and it was a heck of a lot of fun to play. I had a really good time playing it, um, and I wanted to play it multiplayer. And I was looking around for a community of other people who played the game, and I found that community. And let's see, why isn't this streaming? Why isn't it sharing this screenshot to? Oh, you know what? Because my big head's in the way. Let's move my big head out of the way. There we go. All right. So what ended up happening was I encountered a group of people here, the Kriegsspiel News Forum, and this is the original online Kriegsspiel community on planet Earth. And these are the folks who are based out of Little Gaddesden, England, or UK. And they're the ones who basically kind of gave me my introduction to Kriegsspiel through the medium of this game called Scourge of War. And it was pretty cool. They figured out over probably many, many months how to make this multiplayer capable. The company that developed it released an SDK and allowed people to kind of mod the game a little bit. And we slowly figured out how to play it multiplayer. In fact, our first very big multiplayer battle, I don't know how many people were involved, maybe at least a dozen or more. I recall it was a fairly good sized game. There were a lot of crashes to desktop, there were a lot of false starts. I commanded the Confederate side in that first ever human multiplayer game, and it was a lot of fun. And I did some really gamey stuff like rolling my artillery right up into the same line as the infantry to basically amplify the power of my infantry. And it was a fun game. And eventually, we kind of created this whole uh, experiment where we kind of broke up into sides, Union and Confederate, and we created chains of command, and we created orders of battle, and then everybody had a rank and all that. And then we started to kind of get really serious, and we figured out how to edit the order of battle database or whatever in the game so that your casualties would carry over and so on and so forth. And that worked pretty well. Eventually, however, internal politics broke down the group, and we had some schisms and some disagreements, and things just kind of fell apart as they typically do. A few months later, the group kind of reconstituted in another environment, as I recall. Another, it wasn't Discord, it was, I can't remember, but it was like Discord back in the day, but it was really like maybe TeamSpeak or something. And the group kind of got going again, and it ran for, a couple, 2 or 3 months, and then that group broke down, and that was that. And we had learned how to play multiplayer, how to edit the database, and so on. Some of the members of those original groups are still here. They're still playing here in the Kriegsspiel group, and they play Scourge of War quite consistently, and they have now for what, like 15 years or so. And they've got very good at modifying the game. And now that the Waterloo version is out there, playing the Waterloo version, and they've heavily modified that, and it's a really cool game. It's fun to play because you play from the first person perspective. If you want, you can zoom up and play from this top down perspective like we play in Kriegsspiel. You can also play it in the saddle. And I actually think playing in the saddle is the way to play. Absolutely enjoyed playing this game from that perspective. It provided a really fun challenge with human players. Very worthwhile. But that was my introduction to Kriegsspiel. At the end of all of that, I didn't quite know or understand Kriegspiel very well. I kind of thought I had an idea of what it was and what it was about, but I really didn't know what I was talking about. I knew that there was this game out there and that there were rules for it somewhere and so on. And so I kind of began this journey where I began learning a little bit about the game, trying to find rules and trying to find things that I could read about online, which is something that I see a lot of people who come to the International Kriegsspiel Society doing. They are exactly where I was, 12, 13 years ago or whatever, trying to figure out how to make all this stuff work, how to make it playable. And over time, I was increasingly disappointed because there was just a complete lack of resources. Nobody was there to point me in the right direction, really. Most people, kind of kept to themselves or kind of kept their cards close to the chest. Um, I can't particularly blame any particular individuals, nor do I even have names to give you. Um, I think when I posted in the Kriegsspiel news forum, people answered my questions to the best of their ability, but that was kind of that. I ended up meeting a friend who was from the United Kingdom, who was an avid word gamer. His name was Brett Bailey, and we're still friends today. And he's still active in the International Kriegsspiel Society on occasion, especially when I say, "Hey, Brett, I need someone to come umpire a game." He'll show up. But he knew how to play original Kriegsspiel, or at least he had a clue. So he got together with myself and a group of his friends. He literally organized an actual, literal, face to face Kriegspiel game. He printed out the maps, he got the pieces made, he set everything up, and we played in a downtown law office. And me and another guy were down in the basement of this law office. He had like a bunch of friends, like 4 or 5, sitting around a table on the first floor, and then somewhere in another room on the first floor he had the master map. And we all kind of brought, our food, loaves and fishes, if you will, so we would have food to eat, kind of like a potluck. And I sat down there in the basement, and he set up the pieces, and the people on the first floor, his friends, they had a lot of questions. So the turns took at least an hour for him to process because he spent a lot of time just talking to his buddies up there, while me and this other stranger were downstairs in the basement, like, I don't know, what do we do? What do we do next? And there was this long march to contact. And at the end of the day, we were probably there 8 or 10 hours. We had barely made contact. We had got through just about 2 hours of game time, and the shooting had just started, but it was nowhere near decisive or anything. He called the game based on the merits of our maneuvers to contact. And that was that. And it was a very disappointing experience. It was very tragic. But I got to see how Kriegsspiel works, and we got to talk about, the problems he had with trying to run the face-to-face game. One is answering a whole bunch of questions. The other one was just the, how do you process the mathematics of the combat? Because the combat tables are there, and all of that's kind of complicated. So we got this brilliant idea. You know what? There's this convention. Let's go to it. And at the convention, we'll run a Kriegsspiel. We'll kind of, gang press our friends to play in the game. And even if it's a small group, it'll be fine. And by the way, there's software out there that will calculate the Kriegsspiel results for you. So we went down to Los Angeles. We went to the Strategicon um, game or a convention in Los Angeles, and we told people, "Hey, let's play Kriegsspiel." And we actually got quite a number of people to join. Like people had heard about Kriegsspiel before, and they were like, "Well, what is this game?" There were those people who were like, "Is this that chess game that they invented during the '70s?" I always hated hearing that because there is some silly game they made up. It's actually based also, I think, on a 18th century chess variant that maybe even predates regular Kriegspiel. But in the 1970s, I think Avalon Hill or somebody came out with a Kriegspiel with one S in the title, and it's this chess variant. No, not interested in that. But anyway, we corrected people's misunderstandings and we got a bunch of people to play. And the computer served us pretty well. We figured out that we had to number the units, so we ended up writing on paper little unit designations so that we could keep track of all the little unit groups. The game worked a little bit better, but it still wasn't perfect. Finally, I decided, well, I'm going to come back to the next convention. I'm going to run this, and I have a whole bunch of ideas. And I figured out a whole different calculus, a whole different system of doing things. One of the things I did was I threw out the rules because the rules were really quite cumbersome. And I was like, well, the rules are actually interfering and they're getting in the way. And as I learned about the development of historical Kriegspiel, I learned that the Prussians had the same issues, and that eventually Julius Verdi von Waw, du von Waw, um, also threw out the rules for similar reasons. Of course, he had something that I did not. He had actual experience. He had experience with the combat of the period. He, could just kind of look at a situation and say, "This is probably going to produce so many casualties," and credibly do that. Me, on the other hand, I'm dealing with an American Civil War scenario because, well, I know the American Civil War. I don't know Franco-Prussian War. I certainly don't know Napoleonic warfare very well. So I kind of, come up with this whole system. I come up with an order of battle. I figure out a way to track casualties and all of these different things. And I give the units experience levels, and I figure, well, these guys have smooth bores, therefore that's a modifier. These guys have rifles and so on. And I had this whole thing worked out. And I ran this scenario, and the game lasted about 8 to 10 hours. I can't remember exactly. It lasted a long time, but we actually played the game to a conclusion. So I was really, really proud of myself. Nonetheless, I realized that the turns were taking a long time, that there was a lot of stuff that I was trying to keep track of. In fact, during the middle of the game, I actually started to throw away my own rules. I junked my own rule set and just started streamlining everything and doing things kind of on the fly. I had the intelligence to lay down a plexiglass sheet on top of all the maps. And I gave the players markers and said, just draw your orders. You don't have to write them all out because originally this furious writing out of the orders on little note cards and stuff it was a disaster. And then for me to understand the handwriting and make sense of the orders and interpret them correctly. Remember, even though Kriegspiel is an exercise about writing orders, the people I had cornered into playing this game have no such training. So they don't know how to write orders. So I'm like, just draw, just tell me what you want. And we figured it out that way and we kind of got through it. Over time, I got better and better at doing this, and then I started actually reading the rule books more. And as I read the historical material, I learned, well, they had some similar struggles to what I had. In other words, these people already did all of the work of inventing the wheel, and here I am reinventing the wheel in my own way. Nonetheless, it proved to be pretty successful. I called the group the Southern California Kriegsspiel Society. I created a Facebook page, and people came from all over to join. Initially, at first, it was just most of us from Southern California. But occasionally, I would get people from other places around the world wanting to join the group, and that was fine. And we shared resources, and if they wanted a map or something, and I had a file, I'd like here, well, here it is. It's on my Google Drive, and have fun with it, no problem, right? Well, of course, COVID hits, and I think by the time COVID hits, I really know my Kriegspiel stuff. Fun fact, I don't. Even now, I don't think I do. But um, we get shut down, and we're like, well, people want to play Kriegspiel. How do we do it? And one of my friends, his name was Mike Sheeter, said, well, why don't you take, there's this program called Tabletop Simulator. Why don't you take and buy 3 copies of the game? And that gives you 3 tabletops. And you get people on, Gmail or whatever else we have. And I think we figured out, hey, we could use Discord for the voice. And why don't you start playing that way? And you can basically create, in a virtual sense, the same environment that we had down in Los Angeles. I think that's a fantastic idea. And we start running a couple games that way. And the people who are now part of the International Kriegsspiel Society, who helped me to run the group, people like Alex and Damon, they were there in those early days, and they contributed their own insights and perspectives. Alex was like, well, Discord has rooms, you can put players in rooms, and now you don't have this whole bunch around the whole table. And Damon came up with a number of graphical and module developments, basically giving us what let's show you what it looks like today. I mean, it's just really cool stuff. And I think most of you who are in the group and others have seen this. But look at this. We have these beautiful maps imported into the module, and we have these amazing pieces here that work really well. And you can flip a piece over, and you can modify the information, track ammo, morale, manpower, whatever. All kinds of things. And Damon did all of this. And I kind of learned along the way how to do some of this myself and started creating my own assets and rule sets and other things. The rule set that I had created for the Southern California Kriegspiel Society, we called it SoCal Kriegspiel. It worked really, really well for that time and place that we were in, but obviously it was really kind of an ad hoc, dirty, off the cuff kind of way of playing. It was like, we're just going to roll a couple d6s for each combat. We're going to compare the two, and that's going to be that, and we're going to move on. And when I compared notes with a couple people who actually run Kriegsspiel professionally, and I won't mention any particular details beyond that because they don't want to, there's a whole legal thing there, and I don't want to get into it, or a whole ethics thing. Um, I don't even know. I don't want to get into that, but uh, when I talked to them, they're like, yeah, that's pretty much what we do as well. So inadvertently, I had kind of developed a system that was very close to the way the professionals are running it. And really, it's just kind of natural selection at work. Good ideas stick around and proliferate while bad ideas get discarded. And that just kind of by trial and error over many years, I refined what I called the Southern California system of Kriegspiel. Nonetheless, as we started playing in this particular online group, we found that that system just wasn't giving people what they needed. We had people who knew what they were doing. We had people who we didn't have the same problems. We were using technology to solve problems that in the physical face-to-face realm, we had to grapple with, but in the online realm, we could do things like, we could create our own dice, for example. There's just a lot of things that we can do in the digital realm that we couldn't do in the face-to-face realm that made advancements possible. At the same time that we're developing our Kriegspiel rule sets in our games, we also have people coming from all over the world trying to join this little Facebook group. And I get the clever idea about a year ago, let's change the name from Southern California to International. And that was when we basically got our start and we became the International Kriegsspiel Society. Really, we're the Southern California, which is denoted by the little red star, and it's a red star because it's California and we have a red star on the state flag. But I also wanted to give a tip of the hat to the folks in Little Gaddiston in the UK. So their star's at the top of the map. They're oriented to be the top of the map because they came first. But then here we are down here in Southern California. But of course, together we've become the International Kriegsspiel Society. The motto being a Caesar or nothing, the die is cast. And Alex, in particular, came up with what was called the brigade system, and the brigade system kind of is the first mature Kriegsspiel system that I think we developed for the group. But even since then, we figured, there's some things with the brigade system that we would like to kind of improve upon. And we've kind of built up and we've developed two or three different systems for how to play and resolve Kriegsspiel games. But at the end of the day, what we've learned is that the system isn't quite what's important. What's important is that we stick to the fundamentals of Kriegsspiel, which is it's a game that's played double blind, it's umpired, there's usually a chain of command, there's delayed orders and implementations, delayed courier messages, there's of course the emphasis on fog of war. And when you put all of those elements together, it doesn't matter whether you're playing Dungeons and Dragons or something here, or you're playing some sort of a diplomatic game or whatever. Really, you are playing Kriegspiel if you have all of those fundamental elements together. But of course, real Kriegspiel is pushing blocks into each other and rolling dice based on the values of the blocks and the units and the terrain and so on. And to capture all of that, I've developed my own system called the Kriegsspiel 22 system, which is sort of my definitive work. Basically, it takes everything that I've learned and all my years of learning Kriegsspiel on the streets, and I've created my own simplified system of how to play Kriegsspiel based on all my experience and what I think it needs to have versus none of the minutia. I wanted to get rid of the minutia, but have all the rules and so on. Other people have their own kind of thoughts and philosophies, and these things show up in the games that they run and the rule sets that they've kind of come up with for themselves. At the end of the day, the rules are not important. The rules are really just guidelines. What's important again is that fog of war, that delayed order and courier implementation, and double blind umpired play. And that's really the most important stuff. How you resolve the combats or other things is really kind of immaterial as long as the players have the right experience and it feels realistic to them and the results are consistent and fair and so on. I want to say hello to Achilles, and he says COVID was the father of the International Kriegsspiel Society. Yes, just as war is the mother of invention, COVID, this great misfortune, also the same. And Achilles also says, yesterday I got to play my first real big IKS scenario, and it was great. The product of your efforts is a good system that continues to get better. Great work, sir. Thank you, Achilles. And I want people to know that this isn't just me. It's not just my own effort. What it is I've put together a group of people, or I've attracted a group of people, more like it. I'm kind of passive here. And it's that group of people to whom I've given various keys to the kingdom, and they've done all of this work on their own initiative because they love Kriegspiel. It's not about me, it's about the Kriegspiel, and they love the Kriegspiel, and they want the community to grow because we all benefit from it. For me, I wanted to build the community because I was tired of umpiring. I wanted to play. And I was never able to play until I built up this community and got it working. Now I get to play all the time. And that's fantastic. I like doing that. Um, and now I'm taking my expertise and experience, and I'm taking these rule sets, which are really training exercises, and I'm turning it into a game that can people can play on a practical level with two or three or a small group or maybe even solitaire. I'm working that up, and I expect to be done with that by sometime in May. About one more month of development is all I need. Um, and there you have it. So that's the International Kriegsspiel Society. That's me. That's where I learned my Kriegsspiel. Like I said, I learned it on the streets. But we are doing all of these wonderful games. There's all this cool stuff that's going on, and you folks out there in the world are invited to become part of this. We do have a Facebook group. It's called Kriegsspiel on Facebook. Just Google it or search it. You should be able to find it. You can join that absolutely. And of course, we have our Discord. Let me see if I can open the Discord. And here's the Discord, and here's everyone just kind of chatting. We even have somebody here in the game room, and so on. And here's our welcome page. Let's see, don't we have like we have a page where everyone kind of shows up. Here we go, and you can come watch the video on how to play, how we play in the group, and so on. And we have all kinds of resources and materials here for you, and we'll support you. Whether you want to play with your friends, in the real world face to face, or you want to come play online virtually with us over Discord and so on, absolutely. And there's a lot more good stuff and good developments to come. So there you have it. But yes, I learned my Kriegsspiel on the streets. I was not formally trained in how to run a Kriegsspiel. I read the rule books much later than I should have, but in the end, I found that I had kind of reinvented the wheel in a similar way. And of course, I did, because the problems that I encountered are the same problems or similar problems to what the Prussians and others before me have encountered, and natural selection applies. Ultimately, obviously, you end up with a wheel, right? Because a wheel is a far more efficient shape than a square or a triangle. And, that's just kind of how it works. It's not that I'm a genius or anything. I am a little bit of a maverick in that I kind of just go off and do what I want to do anyway. And, you know, that's for better or for worse. There are times when I step on toes or make mistakes, but there are also times when good things come of it. You either get the medal or the court martial, right? And I've drawn both. But that's that. That's the history. So, um, Jan from Let's Play History, who, by the way, he has a great little YouTube channel of his own. Search up Let's Play History and like and subscribe that one. And he says, "This is the Kriegspiel police, what's going on here in the streets." And yes, absolutely. Um, and Achilles accuses me of stealing dice and maps. Yep, there you go. Most kids are stealing candy bars and clothing and jewelry, and here I am stealing dice and maps. What will they ever do with me? All right. Well, that's what I have today. I'm supposed to go on. It's 9:30. I'm supposed to go on for 2 more minutes. But hey, maybe you want those 2 minutes to go on with the rest of your day. I don't know. But again, I invite everyone to join our Discord, and the way that you kind of find everything, I think, is really just come here to the International Kriegsspiel Society at kriegspiel.org, and here it is. And you can send us a message. You can join our Discord right here, or you can shop our merch if you're really that into it. And the merchandise should be priced only like $1 or $2 above our cost, because it's not there for us to make money. It's really just there to, supply you with cool stuff that you might want. So we got sweaters and other things like that. So there you have it. All right, well, everybody, I want to thank you all for being here and for tuning into the show. I've been told I need to talk about miniatures in Kriegsspiel. We had actually a great discussion on that this morning. Maybe that will be next week's topic. We'll talk about why we're using blocks versus miniatures, which you'll see here. Where's the miniatures, right? Can you use miniatures? The answer is actually yes, you can. Do I like miniatures? I actually don't have a problem with using miniatures, but I do have this big joke that the people who use miniatures are playing with dolls and not playing Kriegsspiel. Uh, there we go. See, my headset cuts out after 30 minutes exactly, so it tells me, hey, that's time. And look, it's 9:32. Anyway, that's enough of that. We'll talk about that next week. And I want to thank you all for being here. And all right, we will see you